Coons of Delaware. Good evening to you. I understand you attended one of the women's marches, although you are, I should note, a man. But tell us why that was important to you and what, if anything, that says about how Democratic politicians are working with the grassroots.
That's right, Ari. My daughter and I, first thing in the morning, about 6 a.m., joined a busload of our neighbors and friends from Wilmington, Delaware, and came down to Washington to participate in the Women's March on Washington. There were nearly 30 busloads of Delawareans who came down to Washington, and I must say it was a very positive, uplifting experience. I frankly found the inauguration on Friday very concerning. President Trump's inaugural address, I thought, was negative, was dark, was dystopian about our future, about the accomplishments of the recent years and the administration, about our role in the world. I participated in the march here with my daughter, in no small part to hold up a more positive and more inclusive view of women's role in the world and of our role in the world. And I look forward to working with grassroots activists in Delaware to harness some of that energy to some upcoming special elections in Delaware, and to make sure that we here in Congress are listening to and attentive to the concerns of millions of activists, women and citizens more broadly, who engaged in these marches all over our country.
So you talk about that as a contrast. When you looked around that crowd, did you think of it as Democrats? Did you think of it as Clinton voters? Did you think of it as independents, women and others that you actually need to do more as a Democratic Party leader to appeal to?
I think we need to do more to listen to folks of all backgrounds in the United States. The Democratic caucus is about to do a two-day retreat, and one of the things I've been urging is that we take more time to listen to the voices of those outside of Washington who feel like we really haven't fought for them, haven't stood up for them, haven't represented them in recent years, and take that seriously and retune both our economic message and our political approach. The folks who I had a chance to listen to and meet with in the course of a full day here at the March in Washington were from a very wide range of backgrounds and political perspectives, and they were mostly motivated to come here to lift up a more positive and inclusive vision of America than they had heard in the inaugural address.
Well, you talk about inclusion, and there's really no doubt at a factual level about how much broader some of the messaging and some of what we heard from those marches was than the kind of dark or plaintive tone in the president's inaugural address. But when you look at the politics here, which matters, I mean, a big part of what Democrats are trying to do is figure out why, despite some of these rays of energy or hope, the party seems to be really losing ground in the governor's house, as you know, and in a lot of the state legislatures, and obviously in the Electoral College, even if there is a majority out there, or at least a plurality out there. Take a look at this graphic that MTP Daily producers pulled up that's pretty interesting, comparing this to the Tea Party. The marches are in Obama-Clinton areas, right? 80% compared to 33% in the Tea Party rallies. That's sort of what you might call the blue states, right? In those pivotal Obama-Trump areas, though, the Tea Party rallies historically, by the data, were at 25% compared to just 11% under Obama and Trump. Now, I'm not suggesting, and I think it would be facile to suggest, oh, people should only march depending on where they live. Obviously, people are marching where they are, and this is a community event. But as someone who wants to go about the hard business of also winning back seats, do those numbers concern you?
Well, I do think we need to focus on the swing districts in our country, as well as on places in our country that have been left out in the long economic recovery over the last 8 years. We've seen positive numbers in terms of wage growth and new jobs created, but there's lots of places in our country that haven't felt that difference. There were many folks who came from places who we might consider swing districts or districts left out of the recovery who came to the march in Washington. So I'm not sure that the numbers you just put up about where the Tea Party marches happened, where the Women's March just happened, are all that telling. What matters most is whether we in the Democratic caucus here in the Senate are able to hear these concerns, channel it, harness it, and focus it in a positive way. I do think that my office, frankly, has already heard hundreds more calls from my constituents voicing opposition to some of the more extreme nominees for Trump's cabinet. Betsy DeVos for education, Price for health and human services, Pruitt for EPA, I do think we're going to hear more energy and more engagement from the grassroots all over the country.
Well, and Senator, this was Monday, day one. I want to get, before you go, your views. Anything Trump did today that particularly concerned you? And was there anything you saw that gave you any positive view?
I was very struck negatively by the tone and conduct of his speech at the CIA and by his executive order saying it's the policy of this administration to repeal the Affordable Care Act long before they have any coherent plan to replace it. I do think that's going to cause more Americans to lose their health coverage and will cause more dislocation in the health insurance markets.
Senator Coons, thank you. Very interesting to get your views as a lot happened today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ari.
Now, still ahead, some details of the